The day after Rosh Hashaná is Tzom Gedalia. And for some people, it's a letdown. Because Tzom Gedalia, it's a fast day. People are weak. In yeshivas, part of the day you rest. One would hope that right after Rosh Hashanah, you're starting this new life. Full speed ahead. And there's Tzom Gedalia. So we have to appreciate what Tzom Gedalia is. Tzom Gedalia Be'etzem has absolutely nothing to do with Rosh Hashanah, with Yom Kipur. These are one of the four tzomos, one of the four fast days commemorating the destruction of the temple, the Churban. What's it doing here, B'chlal? Also, compared to Shavasa B'Tammuz, Asar B'Teva, Shavasa B'Tammuz, Tisha B'Av, we understand those were the stages in the destruction of Bayis Rishon, Bayis Sheni. What's Tzom Gedalia? There was a small Jewish presence that was allowed after the Churban Bayis Rishon. And because of the infighting, the politics, Gedaliah Ben Ajikam, the leader, was assassinated. And that was really the end to the Yishuv Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael after Bayis Rishon. Is that on the same level as the other fast days? Is it the same level of tragedy? There was a small presence. Of course, it's heartbreaking. Even that didn't last. But what makes this so important? We find Chazal telling us that Gedaliah Ben Ajikam is held responsible for his death and the death of all the people that were killed with him. The pasuk seems to suggest that. They were killed by way of Gedaliah Ben Ajikam. Why is that? So the Gemara tells us, if we look at the psukim, Gedaliah was warned. He was warned that they were out to get him. But he was a tzaddik. He wasn't makabel Lashon Hará. And because of that, he was killed and all the people with him were killed. Says the Gemara, he was wrong. Hi lishna bisha, this Lashon Hará, even though there's an Isser of Kabbalah, you're not supposed to believe it. Lemechash miuboi. What you have to do is take the necessary precautions. So that's a chiddush in Hilchos Lashon Hará. You don't believe it. You don't change the way you feel about the other person, but you have to protect yourself. Whatever means you must take in order to be protected, you've got to do, even though you continue thinking of the person the way you did before you heard these nasty things about. It sounds like it's a lot more than just Hilchos Lashon Hará. This seems to be a basic attitude on life. And that is, you got to be careful. When you become more of a tzaddik, make sure you're not naive. Make sure you're not naive. What was his aveira? He completely discounted this idea that there are people out to get him. He completely discounted it. That's being naive. Being a tzaddik doesn't mean me being naive. And in Klal Yisrael, being a tzaddik means being wise. If you're not wise, you can't be a tzaddik. Same way we say, Lo amar it's chosid. The ignorant one cannot be a chosid. The ignorant one cannot be pious, holy. It's the same thing here. A tzaddik does not mean someone who is so pure that he doesn't understand life and he's not responsible. It's a lack of tzidkis. The fact that Gedaliah Ben Ajikam is accused of being responsible for his own death and the death of the others that were killed with him. That's a clear message. Being a tzaddik, where you're being naive, you're guilty on some level. You're guilty for whatever the Rasha did. Being a tzaddik means you got to be wise. You see, Rosh Hashaná, Rosh Hashanah, we changed our attitudes. In the days leading up to Rosh Hashanah and Rosh Hashanah itself, we changed our attitudes. We live for one thing. We live for Kirvas Elokim. We live to work hard and accept the schar that Hashem gives, which is a relationship with Him in Olam Hazeh, Olam Haba. Okay? Make sure that the way that translates to action is not naive. If you think that immediately after Rosh Hashanah, you've become a tzaddik gomer, and you imagine that your behavior is going to be on levels way ahead of yourself, you're making a terrible mistake. So the day after Rosh Hashanah is Tzom Gedalia, the day to think about it. And it's also, not a day that you can give it your all, because we are fasting and we're weaker. Because there really is this fear that after Rosh Hashanah, we're going to imagine ourselves a lot holier than we really are. And we're going to start practicing in a way that's way above us and is not realistic. And as far as Hashem is concerned, we're being clowns. That's not real tshuva. That's not real growth. Real growth has to be thought through. And this is really something of an introduction to what we're going to be talking about for everything about Yom Kippur, is how to do realistic tshuva. Tshuva that lasts, tshuva that's real, tshuva that's not lip service, tshuva where you're not going to find yourself going through the same process year after year and remaining the same, having the same issues year after year. It's got to be a wise tshuva. That's the message of Tzom Gedalia. Don't be naive. It's got to be a wise tshuva. Now, at the same time, in Aseret Yemei Tshuva, we find that there's an inyan of keeping chumras. It says, Lamashal, people who are makel with non-Jewish baked bread, pasakum. So there are heterim of paspalter, bakery bread, which is different than private bread. With all the heterim, it says during Aseret Yemei Tshuva, if you can, the right thing is to be machmer. And there are a lot of chumras that people will keep during Aseret Yemei Tshuva. And the question is, what are we playing a game? We're following the Shulchan Aruch that says on Aseret Yemei Tshuva you keep these chumras, and after Yom Kippur you stop keeping these chumras. Whom are we kidding? Certainly not Hashem, perhaps ourselves. What is the inyan of keeping chumras? So I like to give two approaches. I believe they're both right. The very first one is that if you recognize that at this time of year your life is on the line, you're going to keep a higher level. Meaning, if you're just going to continue behaving during Aseret Yemei Tshuva the way you do all year long, then you're ignoring the fact that these are Yemei Din. These are days of judgment. No, we're not talking about walking around with terrible fear. We already spoke about that with regard to Rosh Hashanah. The greatest fear is the lost opportunity. The fear is not walking around feeling like you're about to fall into Gehenna, chas v'shalom. Nevertheless, there's got to be a consciousness that your life is on the line. This whole year ahead of you, which maybe your whole future, is on the line. And of course you want to do your best. That's number one. Number two is giving yourself something of a vision of what you'd like to look like someday. Telling Hashem, no, this is not me today. But I'd really like to reach this level at some point in time. I'd like to be a holier person. I'd like to be a greater medactic b'mitzvahs. I would want to be in a place where I don't rely on the generally accepted leniencies, the coolest. That's also a message, an important one. So altogether, for Aseret Yemei Tshuva, the hanhaga, one's behavior is different, it's on a higher level. But make sure that it's not stilted in a way that you're fooling yourself into thinking that this is whom you've really become. Because in order to grow into a higher place, there are many steps. We'll be talking about this with regard to the whole tshuva process. And it's going to take time. Yeah, yesh kain alama b'sha'achas. We find in the Gemara all of those who did a total turnaround in 1 hour, 1 minute, 1 second. But they didn't survive. They didn't survive. To go on leading a healthy life afterwards Your tshuva has got to be a healthy and not abrupt. It cannot be an abrupt tshuva. It's got to be a healthy tshuva. That's, again, the message of Tzom Gedalia and the message for all of us Aseret Yemei Tshuva. Now, we spoke about Elul as being the time before creation, where what existed was Hashem's Ratzon Lahetiv. That's the Elul that comes before Rosh Hashaná. Elul is also time before Yom Kipur. And Aseret Yemei Tshuva too are the time before Yom Kipur. And we understand that these are the 40 days that Moshe Rabbeinu was up in heaven, getting Luchas Shniyas, getting the Torah that Klal Yisrael lost, getting it the second time. And Chazal tell us during all of that time, they were blowing shofar and reminding everybody, Moshe Olol Amorin, Moshe Rabbeinu was up in heaven, Al Titu Be'egel, don't forget yourself. Don't make the same mistake we did the first time when we thought Moshe Rabbeinu was missing and we created an egel. So for these 40 days, these are days of preparation for Yom Kippur, aside from preparation for Rosh Hashaná. And the preparation, of course, is preparing ourselves for Teshuva. In order to really appreciate what we're supposed to do in the preparation, we have to understand the Teshuva process. And once again, we're going to be discussing this very soon as we get into the whole idea of Yom Kippur. But what it means is that Elul really serves a dual purpose. Number one, working up that desire to work hard, to earn our existence. Right? That was what we said Elul was about, and that's really what Rosh Hashanah is about. And the first two of the Aseret Yemei Tshuva Rosh Hashanah are really committing ourselves to a lifetime of work, of accepting the challenges, of really wanting to grow and working hard for it, and appreciating how great that is. It's the greatest. That's what we live for. At the same time, we also have to start paying attention to our midos. We have to start paying attention to the way we behave and really start on reforming them. So that Elul and Aseret Yemei Tshuva, as preparation for Yom Kippur, must include not only that basic clarity of what we live for, it must also include actually working on our midas. Because if you're going to wait for after Rosh Hashanah and only have Aseret Yemei Tshuva for it, or certainly if you're going to wait till Yom Kippur itself, we're going to see the process is one that calls for a lot of understanding of yourself, a lot of self-awareness, and a lot of inner work. And you can't do that on Yom Kippur. Certainly not Yom Kippur, because it's a day where there's just so much pressure. And it's a day where you're in shul, you're not eating, you're not out on the street. It's a day where everyone's on their best behavior. And it may be the day that's most difficult to get a realistic self-image and understand what needs to change and how you're going to change it. So for that, we make use of Elul and Aseret Yemei Tshuva. They are in preparation. Number one, for Rosh Hashanah, in recommitting ourselves to work hard. And second, preparation for Yom Kippur, making sure that we are mindful of the way we operate, of our midas, our values, and really embarking on a process where we are going to really grow and change and take ourselves to a very good place.